Anna Harper didn't believe in destiny, but she'd never forget the moment her world tilted. It wasn't when her father passed, leaving her to carry his memory alone, or when she became a single mother, raising Liam through sleepless nights. It was a whisper, sharp and cruel, on a crowded flight from Seattle to Chicago. A man's voice, thick with arrogance, cut through the hum of the plane. "Take off that jacket, sweetheart." Then, a jab at the man beside her, a black veteran dismissed with a sneer. "Stay out of it, hero." That moment, 34 minutes after takeoff, something sparked. Anna's heart raced, and everything changed. She sat in seat 17B, clutching 6-year-old Liam, his small chest rising softly in sleep. The cabin felt heavy, the air thick with tension. Anna's grief from her father's funeral folded into her like a shadow. She wasn't ready for confrontation. Not today. The man beside her, James Carter, sat silent, his posture steady, watchful. His dark eyes scanned the cabin, not with fear, but with a quiet strength that felt like a shield. When the voice behind her sneered again, colder, laced with venom, Anna froze. Her fingers tightened around Liam's hand, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. What happened next would unravel a story she never expected to live. The voice behind Anna grew sharper, dripping with malice. "Come on, sweetheart, ditch the jacket. You'd look better without it." Her breath caught, a cold knot tightening in her chest. She didn't turn, didn't dare. Liam slept against her, unaware, his small hand limp in hers. Then the man's tone shifted, venom aimed at James. "Stay out of it, boy." No need for heroes here. The words stung like a slap, heavy with contempt. Anna's pulse quickened, her fingers trembling. She whispered, "Please, stop," her voice barely steady. A mocking laugh answered, and a hand grazed her seat, too close. Suddenly James moved. He unbuckled his seatbelt, stood, his frame a quiet wall between Anna and the threat. "Enough," he said, his voice low, sharp as steel, cutting through the cabin's hum. The man smirked, but James's eyes held steady, unyielding, like a storm held back. "I said, stop." The air grew still, every passenger watching. The man's smirk faded, his hands raised in mock surrender. Moments later, a flight attendant approached, her steps quick. The troublemaker was led away, muttering. James sat down, silent, his hands resting calm. Anna turned to him, her voice soft. "Thank you." He nodded once. "You're welcome." The cabin settled, but Anna's heart still raced, stirred by a man who didn't need to speak to be heard. The plane shuddered, a low groan echoing through the cabin. A voice crackled over the intercom, calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a storm over Chicago, we're diverting to Boise, Idaho. We'll keep you updated." Anna's heart sank. She pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching snow swirl in the darkness outside. Liam stirred in her lap, his small face peaceful, untouched by the weight she carried. Her father's funeral still clung to her, a quiet ache that hadn't faded. She wasn't ready for this detour, not now. James sat beside her, his presence steady, like an anchor in the chaos. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His silence felt like a promise that she wouldn't face this alone. When the plane touched down, the cold bit at their skin as they stepped into Boise's small terminal. The air smelled of stale coffee and damp coats. Anna held Liam close, his weight grounding her. James lifted her bag without a word, his steps sure. In the dim glow of the terminal, he found a quiet corner, away from the grumbling crowd. He set the bag down, handed Anna a bottle of water from a vending machine. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, warm. She nodded, though her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "Just not how I planned tonight." He gave a faint smile, almost imperceptible. Plans don't always hold up in a storm. Anna looked at him, really looked. His face, lined with experience, held no judgment, only a quiet strength. Liam nestled against her, his breathing soft. James glanced at him, then back at Anna. He's tough, like his mom. Her throat tightened, unexpected. She hadn't felt seen in years, not like this. Outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, something shifted, a fragile thread of trust weaving between two strangers in a place neither called home. In the quiet of a Boise hotel room, the world felt smaller, softer. Anna tucked Liam into bed, his small form curled beneath a thin blanket, clutching his stuffed bear. The lamp cast a warm glow, pushing back the storm's chill outside. She sat on the edge of her bed, exhaustion heavy in her bones. James was across from her, hands clasped, gaze steady but distant. "You always this calm in a mess like this?" Anna asked, voice a whisper. James's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Learn to be when there's no other choice." His words invited more. She asked. "Kabul," he said, voice low, rough. "I gave an order. A woman died. Her eyes, they don't leave me." Anna's chest tightened. She knew guilt like that. "My dad," she said, voice catching. "I cared for him through cancer, but losing him left me adrift." She paused, then ventured deeper. "How do you stay calm when people look at you like that man on the plane? Like you're less?" James's eyes met hers, unflinching. "You get used to it. Not because it's right, but because you carry your own worth." "I've faced those looks since I was a kid, on buses, in uniform, even after medals. You stand taller, not for them, but for you." His words landed soft but heavy, stirring something in Anna. She thought of Liam, of nights when fear outran hope. "How do you keep going?" she asked, voice barely steady. "You just do," he said. "For the people who need you, like your boy." Anna's eyes stung, his words mirroring her own quiet battles. She saw his hands, scarred from years of service, resting calm. "I'm not sure I'm enough for him," she admitted, her voice raw. "You are," James said. "You're here, carrying it all." Anna glanced at Liam, his small chest rising in sleep. "You're stronger than you know," James added. She gave a bitter laugh. "Doesn't feel like it." He leaned forward. "Strength isn't loud. It's showing up, day after day." The snow tapped the window, a gentle rhythm. Anna looked at James, his face etched with a life she was only beginning to understand. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Something unspoken passed between them, a fragile possibility, like a spark in the stillness of a stormy night. The hotel room's quiet was shattered by a sharp knock at the door. Anna's heart skipped, her fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket covering Liam. James stood, his calm fracturing for the first time, eyes narrowing. He opened the door, revealing a man in a dark suit, a badge glinting under the hallway's cold light. "Colonel Carter," the man said, voice clipped. "We need to discuss Kabul." Anna's breath caught, the word heavy with secrets she didn't yet know. James's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "This isn't the time." The man's eyes flicked to Anna, then back. "It's not a request." Anna stood, her voice trembling but firm. "What's going on?" James turned to her, his gaze steady but heavy, like a man carrying a weight he couldn't set down. "Just procedure," he said, too calm. "I'll handle it." He stepped into the hall, the door clicking shut behind him. Anna stood frozen, Liam's soft breathing the only sound in the room. "Kabul." The word echoed, a ghost from James's past she hadn't been invited to know. Had she misjudged him? The man who'd stood up for her, who'd carried her bag, who'd looked at Liam with such care. Was there something darker beneath? Her mind raced, replaying his words about that mission. The woman's eyes he couldn't forget. Outside, the snow fell harder, a relentless curtain against the window. Anna sank onto the bed, her hands shaking. She wanted to trust him, wanted to believe the warmth in his voice was real. But doubt crept in, cold and sharp, like a blade she couldn't see. The storm outside mirrored the one inside her, each gust asking the same question. Who was James Carter really? And why had fate brought him into her life, only to pull him away in the middle of a snowy Idaho night? Back in Chicago, Anna sat alone in her small apartment, the laptop's glow casting shadows across her face. Liam slept in the next room, his soft snores a faint comfort. She typed James Carter Kabul into the search bar, fingers hesitating before pressing enter. The screen filled with fragments of a story she wasn't sure she wanted to know. A headline glared, "Kabul mission sparks controversy, civilian casualty reported." Her stomach twisted. She clicked, reading of a night thick with dust and chaos, where James gave an order to withdraw. A young woman, caught in the crossfire, didn't make it. Anna's breath hitched, seeing James's face in Boise, his voice breaking as he spoke of those eyes. She closed her eyes, the memory of the plane flooding back. James's hand on her seat, his voice cutting through the man's slurs, steady, unyielding. She saw his calm defiance, the way he shielded her and Liam without hesitation. How could that man carry such a brutal choice? She opened her eyes, scrolling further. Another article buried deeper told of lives saved, dozens, maybe more, because of his call. He'd chosen the unbearable to protect his team. A photo showed James in uniform, his face younger but already lined with duty. Anna's hands trembled, her mind caught between the soldier on her screen and the man who'd sat across from her in Boise. She remembered his words, soft but firm. Strength isn't loud. Had she judged him too quickly? The laptop's hum filled the silence, a quiet challenge. Her eyes drifted to a photo, her and Liam smiling alone. She'd built walls to keep them safe, but James had slipped through with kindness. Kabul wasn't just a mistake. It was a scar he wore openly, one she'd misread. She thought of the slurs hurled at him on the plane, the weight he carried without complaint. In Boise, he'd spoken of carrying his own worth, despite those who saw him as less. That strength, she realized, wasn't just in his actions, but in his refusal to let hate define him. Chicago's lights flickered outside, steady despite the cold. Anna closed the laptop, her heart heavy but clearer. James wasn't perfect, but neither was she. Her father's death, her years alone, they'd taught her strength wasn't about never breaking, but carrying the pieces forward. She saw Liam stuffed bare on the couch, a reminder of the boy who needed her to be brave. James had been brave for her, for others, even when it cost him. Maybe he was still carrying those pieces, and maybe she could trust him to carry hers too. The Chicago dawn was gray, snow dusting the steps outside Anna's apartment. She opened the door to take Liam to school, her breath catching at the sight of James standing there, his hoodie flecked with white flakes. His eyes, usually so steady, carried a weariness she hadn't seen before. "I shouldn't have left like that," he said, voice low, raw. "Kabul, it's not what you think." Anna's heart thudded, caught between doubt and the warmth of his presence. She stepped aside, her voice soft. "Come in." Liam, hearing the door, ran from his room, his face lighting up. "James!" he shouted, throwing his arms around him. James knelt, returning the hug, his smile faint but real. Anna watched, her chest tightening. She gestured to the kitchen, where coffee steamed in 2 mugs. They sat, the air thick with unspoken questions. "In Kabul," James began, his hands clasped tight. "I gave an order. A girl died. I saw her too late. But if we hadn't moved, my whole team would have been lost." His voice cracked, just once. Anna's eyes softened, seeing not a soldier, but a man haunted by choices no one should make. She thought of the plane, his calm defiance against hate, the way he'd carried her bag in Boise without asking. "You didn't tell me," she said, not accusing, just searching. He met her gaze. "I didn't want you to see that part of me, the part that failed." Anna reached across the table, her hand brushing his. "You didn't fail me. Or Liam." The room grew quiet, Liam's crayons scratching softly in the background. Outside, the snow slowed, as if the world was holding its breath. James looked at her, his shoulders easing, like a weight had shifted, not gone, but shared. Anna felt it too, a trust, fragile but growing, like a seed breaking through frost. For the first time, she believed they might carry each other's scars, not as burdens, but as proof they'd both kept going. Duan Diu Chin, 552, plus 102. Morning light spilled through Anna's kitchen window, painting the Chicago apartment in soft gold. She stood by the counter, pouring coffee, its steam curling like a quiet hope. James sat at the table, his hands steady, but eyes heavy with something unspoken. He reached into his jacket and slid a folded paper across to her. Anna unfolded it, her breath catching at the words, "Honorable discharge." Her heart caught, not just at the paper, but at the man who'd chosen her over a life of orders. "You're giving it all up?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. James nodded. "For you, for Liam, for something real." Liam, scribbling at the table, added a stick figure to his drawing. James, tall and smiling, holding hands with him and Anna. "You're staying for good?" Liam asked, eyes wide with hope. James's smile softened. "Yeah, kid." "For good." Anna's throat tightened, her fingers brushing the paper's edge. She saw her father's face, the years she'd carried alone, nights when hope felt distant. Her mind drifted to Boise, James's voice in the storm, steady, sure. He'd stood for her then, against cruelty, against slurs, and now he was choosing to stay, not out of duty, but love. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. James leaned forward, gaze unwavering. "I know, but I want to. For once I'm choosing what matters." The room felt warmer, as if the walls exhaled. Anna's eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with a quiet relief. She thought of the plane, the weight of fear, and how James had been her shield. Now he was offering more, a life where she didn't have to carry it all alone. Liam held up his drawing, grinning. "Look, James, you're in our family." James's smile broke through, soft but real, like sunlight after a long storm. Anna reached for his hand, her fingers finding his, steady, warm. She felt the scars on his palm, marks of a life that had shaped him, just as her own losses had shaped her. This wasn't a fairy tale, but a choice. To build something new, together. Outside, Chicago stirred, cars humming, birds calling. The coffee cooled, untouched, as something new took root, a life not defined by past mistakes or fleeting heroics, but by the courage to stay, to choose each other, day after day, in the ordinary light of a new morning. Golden leaves crunched under Liam's sneakers as he darted through a Chicago park, his laughter bright against the autumn chill. Anna sat on a weathered bench, her scarf loose around her neck, watching him chase the wind. James stood beside her, hands in his pockets, no longer the guarded soldier from that Seattle flight. His shoulders were relaxed, his smile easy, like a man who'd found his place. A year had passed since Boise, since Kabul's shadow hung between them. Now their mornings were filled with coffee and crayons, evenings with Liam's stories and quiet glances that said more than words. Liam ran back, waving a drawing, 3 stick figures, hands linked under a bright sun. "That's us," he said, beaming. Anna's heart swelled, her fingers brushing James's. She remembered the weight of her father's loss, the years of carrying everything alone. James hadn't erased that, but he'd shared it, his presence steady as the oak trees around them. "He's drawing you in everything now," Anna said, her voice soft. James chuckled, a low warmth. "Kids got me as a superhero and a bear in the same picture." Anna laughed, the sound light, free. The park hummed with life, children shouting, leaves falling, the city breathing beyond. They stood together, watching Liam run, his joy a thread weaving them closer. James's hand found hers, his grip firm but gentle, not a soldier's strength, but a man's. Anna leaned into him, just slightly, feeling the world shift, not with grand gestures, but with the quiet certainty of belonging. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. In that moment, they weren't just strangers who'd met on a stormy flight. They were a family, built not on promises of perfection, but on the courage to stay, to choose each other through the ordinary beauty of a crisp Chicago day. The Chicago skyline glowed under a fading autumn sun, its lights blinking awake like stars against the dusk. Anna and James stood side by side, their breath visible in the cooling air, while Liam's laughter echoed from the park behind them. His latest drawing, a family of 3, hands clasped under a bright crayon sky, lay folded in Anna's pocket, a quiet proof of the life they'd built. This wasn't the story Anna expected when she boarded that flight from Seattle, when James's steady presence cut through her fear. It wasn't about heroes or grand rescues, but about the courage to face what's broken, inside yourself, in the world, and still choose to stay. James had carried Kabul's weight, the sting of slurs, and yet he stood here, not as a soldier, but as a man who chose her and Liam. Anna's heart held her father's memory, softer now, shared in the quiet moments with James. Courage, she'd learned, wasn't just standing up to cruelty on a plane or surviving alone. It was showing up, day after day, for those who matter. It's standing against unfairness, even when your voice shakes, or thanking a friend who's been your anchor. It's holding someone's hand when the world feels heavy. For all of us watching, this is a call to look closer at the people who stay, who carry our burdens without fanfare. Try this. Reach out to someone who's been your strength this week. Tell them they matter. Whether it's a parent who never gave up, a friend who listened, or a stranger who showed kindness. Call out wrong when you see it, no matter how small. Maybe a coworker passed over unfairly, a neighbor judged for their skin, or a quiet injustice in your community. Speak up, not with anger, but with the quiet strength James showed on that flight. These acts, small as they seem, weave the threads of a life worth living. They build families, not just of blood, but of choice, like the one Anna, James, and Liam found. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of the quiet heroes in your own life, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to hear more stories that matter. Let's keep telling these stories, lifting up the voices of those who choose courage over fear, connection over division. The city hummed below, its pulse steady, alive. Anna, James, and Liam walked home, their shadows blending into one. A family not born of chance, but of choices made in the face of storms, both seen and unseen, under a sky that promised another day.